Yo YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy SalvationsElite. We are back with another video, guys, and today it's the OpTic news once again. And this is probably going to be the last OpTic video for a little bit at least. I don't think there's going to be really any more news for at least a little while about OpTic. So today, Immortals finally announced the acquisition of Infinite Esports, who is the holding company of OpTic Gaming, obviously. So Immortals has a holding company of their own. IGC is the holding company for Immortals. So now IGC owns Immortals, Infinite, OpTic, MIBR, LA Valiant. So they're all over the place. And now they announced a little bit of their plans for the future for OpTic and the direction they want to take OpTic moving forward. Basically, we're going to go through the statement that Immortals put out and talk about the pros and the cons and the direction that it looks like they're going to try to take OpTic. And again, we haven't heard from Hecz yet, and that's going to be, we're going to talk about that near the end of the video as well. But we haven't heard from him yet about what's happening with him yet. So that is probably the only potential news that could arise from this, is exactly what Hex's role is going to be moving forward. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's just talk about exactly what they said in the press release. So they actually said in the press release that this was the largest control acquisition in esports history, which I think makes sense. And I think that makes sense based off the evaluations of how much both these companies are worth. It probably is the biggest in esports history. I'm gonna believe what they said. But basically, the investors from Infinite, so Infinite's investors Neil Liebman and Ray Davis, who are co-owners of the Texas Rangers, they're going to be joining IGC's board of directors, which, I mean, I think for OpTic, that's not the best news, considering like the relationship that OpTic's had with Infinite, and considering that those two guys were probably two of the three or four main characters in Infinite's direction of OpTic. I don't know if it's great for OpTic that those guys are still involved in decision making, but that is going to be the case. They're going to be on the board of directors now. So again, I don't really love that aspect of it, but it is what it is. So when it comes to League of Legends, it's exactly what we all thought. In 2020, Immortals is going to rebrand the OpTic League of Legends team to the Immortals League of Legends team. I mean, that's what we expected, but basically what they talked about in the rest of this is how they're going to address the OpTic brand. So Ari Siegel, who is the director of Immortals, did call OpTic a content first brand, as you guys are seeing up there, but like literally I don't know. It makes me skeptical of how they're going to address OpTic as an esports brand moving forward. Because, first of all, they didn't mention Gears of War whatsoever in this. CSGO, they did officially announce that CSGO is going to be sold off and it's going to be co-managed until they can sell it by another organization. So, they're going to be selling the CSGO roster. They didn't mention Gears of War, which isn't a great sign, considering Gears of War is an influential part of OpTic Gaming, and like OpTic fans really do embrace the Gears of War team. Because if you were planning on bringing Gears of War back and re-signing the Gears of War team, you'd assume they'd talk about it. But either that decision hasn't been made yet, or they're planning on dropping them. So I don't know exactly if that's a great sign either way. If I had to guess, I'm going to assume that the Gears of War team wouldn't be brought back. But I don't think that decision has actually been officially made yet. So maybe they would be back. And maybe because the Infinite guys are going to be on the board of directors, they're going to tell them, yo, the OpTic fan base is going to be pissed if we get rid of the Gears team. So maybe they'll keep him on. I don't know. That's one of the few things that's up in the air right now for the OpTic thing. So the biggest problem, so like on the surface, it sounds like decent news. So look at the Twitter announcement that was on OpTic Gaming's Twitter, which is technically run by Infinite Esports employees, so they have to do this. So they just said blah 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 blah, we're still OpTic, OpTic's still gonna exist, whatever. That doesn't really mean anything. They're just putting that out there. Like, of course the brand of OpTic is still going to exist somewhere. Like, it's still gonna be there, but it very well might not be the OpTic that so many people love currently, and it's looking more and more like that, especially within like 6 to 8 months. So the biggest hurdle, the biggest problem that OpTic is gonna face is the Call of Duty World League. And also, I forgot to mention the Overwatch team. They announced that they're going to be officially selling them as well. So the Overwatch team is going to be sold, and so will the CSGO teams. Like, what is OpTic if there isn't a CSGO team, a League of Legends team, an Overwatch team, a Gears team? Obviously, no more Halo team already. We figured that one out a while ago. And Call of Duty is still up in the air. The best case scenario, this is the absolute best case scenario, is that they get a spot in the Call of Duty World League. The issue is that the World League has already said you're not going to be able to use your current brand. So like, you're not going to be the Los Angeles OpTic. That's not going to be an option. So you're going to have to be the Los Angeles something that is underneath the OpTic umbrella, or the Immortals umbrella. maybe still has the OpTic roster, like as long as Scump and Crim and Karma are still there or whatever, you know, like that might still be an option, but it's not going to be under the OpTic brand, the OpTic logo. There potentially might not be any esports teams. The Call of Duty situation's up in the air. And based off of this quote here, so I'll just read it real quick. Clearly, OpTic is a premier Call of Duty brand, says Peter Levin. We are excited to work with our partners at Activision Blizzard to ensure that OpTic continues to play that leading role in Call of Duty's future. So that sounds like a Call of Duty World League spot. And again, best case scenario is that it's a not OpTic branded Call of Duty World League team like the Los Angeles whatever, fill in the blank. It's not going to be the OpTic brand as we know it in Call of Duty anymore because of the World League. So this does assume that the OpTic Call of Duty team will be playing under OpTic Gaming for the rest of this year. I can confidently say that that's what this means, that OpTic will play as the OpTic Call of Duty team for the rest of Black Ops 4. So we're going to be seeing OpTic Scump, OpTic Karma, OpTic Crim, OpTic Dashi, OpTic TJ for the rest of this year, which is good news for OpTic considering what we thought potentially could happen like next week. Because I mean, before we thought that potentially OpTic's COD roster could be sold through rostermania next week, but I don't think that's going to be the case, which is positive news. But at this point, it looks like this is going to be a content brand. And Hitch did say on Reddit, he commented on Reddit, it's the only thing that we've actually heard from the OpTic members so far since the announcement, is that Hitch posted on Reddit and said it's still a waiting game. So all we know for sure is that it's still a waiting game, and Hecz has been silent. And the biggest issue besides the whole Call of Duty franchising issue, I just don't know what Hex's role is going to be in this new OpTic. Obviously, he's at odds with some of the Infinite guys. We don't necessarily know his relationship between Neil Liebman and Ray Davis. We don't really know his relationship between those two guys, but I'm assuming it can't be incredibly positive based off of what happened the past year or so, and like based off of what we've seen these last few weeks. On Twitter, people were acting like this was a good idea or this was a good situation, like this was a good thing, but I really see this as a really bad thing, and it's hard for me to believe that Hecz is going to be okay with this and he's going to let this happen, and that the OpTic content creators are going to be willing or excited to stay around. The only reason I think they would is if they get fat checks from Immortals to stay as OpTic content creators, which is definitely a possibility. I mean, I'm not going to put it past them if that's the case. And maybe the OpTic Call of Duty team ends up in Los Angeles, so then you buy a team house in Los Angeles, all the content creators move to LA, so now all the content is made in LA, and it actually ends up being pretty great. That's possible. I guess it is. The biggest issue is I just don't know if that means Hecz is going to be okay with just doing content, and is it going to be in LA? Is it going to be in Texas? Who knows? That's the biggest question at this point, and we're going to have to pay real close attention to what Hecz says these next few days or upcoming few weeks about this. But again, overall, OpTic is more than likely just going to be a content brand in the future, maybe Gears of War. The Call of Duty team is going to play underneath OpTic's brand for the rest of Black Ops 4, I think. And then franchising could really screw things up where I think the OpTic roster might be under the Immortals OpTic brand, but it's not going to be using the OpTic logo. So overall, it's kind of a win-lose situation. Both sides kind of suck, and I don't love either option or outcome for OpTic. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see what Hecz wants to do here. There is a potentially opportunity for him to create his own org or start something up new. I don't know if he really wants to do that, because he's talked about in the past how, that might not be exactly what he wanted to do. I don't know. It's hard to say. But overall, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the update video. If you guys did, like, comment, favorite, and subscribe. Share the video if you guys really enjoy it. I really appreciate it, all the support. Now that I'm doing this full time and I'm trying to do it long term, the support means more than ever. So I appreciate all the shares, comments, Instagram support, Twitter support, or whatever it is, Twitch support. And so as always, guys, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.